So we've been through quite a lot in this lesson already. We've explored type and animators. We dug into Adobe Audition and did some of our own custom recording. Now we're going to bring all of those things together and work a few steps into our audio and type synchronization exercise from this lesson. So I'm going to bring in the audio that we recorded in the previous video, and I'm going to do it just by dragging and dropping from I've got it in a different monitor here. So we can always just double click in the project window. We can do file import. As I always say, there's multiple ways to do things in After Effects. One of those other ways you can import is just drag and drop if you have the ability to just drag from another window. So I have Kinetic type intro.wav. So we've got a WAV file. WAV files, MP3s, they both work pretty well, but if you can get the WAV file, it is a higher quality compared to the MP3. So I like using those where possible. So I've got it here. I'm just going to drag it down into my timeline, and doing that does a few wonderful things for us. It puts the WAV file down in our timeline. It also automatically creates that composition of just the right size and length to match our WAV file. So that's helpful to have. Audio files work pretty similarly to other files in After Effects. They show up in your timeline, you can name them, you can change their label color. You can also drop down and find different parameters, different settings, and different features for the file, just like you would any other. Well, audio files only come with a few settings. They have audio levels, which is measured in decibels, and then they have a visual representation of the waveform. Now this waveform is like audio volume spikes, so this probably is where I said, "Hi, I'm Matt," and kept on speaking, but the down areas are where there was nothing said, and these spikes are where the words are spoken. So that just kind of gives you a way to see where each word is represented in that waveform. The audio levels, however, is something that you can manipulate. You see the stopwatch, that's great. It means we can animate the audio level over time, but then you can increase or decrease the decibels, and doing that you'll see the waveform become more extreme or mellow out. At negative 48 decibels, this waveform basically doesn't exist anymore. It's so quiet that we as humans can't really hear it. So a value of a value of 0 is just kind of default, and a value can go above to 12 decibels or below to minus 48. I would caution you not to go above 10 decibels if you can help it. And the reason why things don't go over 12 is because anything over that just starts to get really distorted, really kind of broken down. Anything below 24 decibels is really, really, really quiet. So if you're going to try and animate something to be completely silent, going below 24 is kind of a good enough territory. You can go all the way down to 48, but just know that anything under 24 is pretty tough to hear already. So let's get to it, shall we? We can preview our Kinetic type intro just by hitting spacebar. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. We should hear my audio recording from the last lesson. Hi, I'm Matt, and I have a few favorites. My favorite... Not bad. We won't listen to the whole thing right now, but we listened to it enough just to know that the audio is coming through well enough, it's loud enough, and it's going to work for our purposes here. So next is we have to add a little bit of type to go along with that. So let's go ahead and take that step. I'll use the type tool, and I'll type in, "Hi, I'm Matt, and I have a few favorites." If I wanted to, I could split this up into 2 rows just by hitting the Enter key. That might make good sense. And so the waveform now could be a little bit helpful because we'll probably see, "Hi, I'm Matt, and I have a few favorites," basically. So we can kind of see where those words will show up. To get this Kinetic type, or this basic Kinetic type started, we have to think about how we're going to bring in these words. The way I spoke was a little bit separated between "Hi, I'm Matt, and I have a few favorites." So that might be a better way to split up these words. So if we wanted to, with the type tool selected, I could cut out I'm Matt and I have a few favorites and put that on a whole new line. And I could cut this out, back that off, and put that on a whole new line. That way we've got 3 separate lines and we can animate them each separately in time with the script. So I'm just going to leave them there for now, and I'm going to make a few changes by adding some markers where my speaking happens. So that it doesn't create any echo, I'm going to turn off my microphone for a moment. So you're going to see me working a little bit, and then I'll be right back. Hi, I'm Matt. And I have a few favorites. So what we did there is we realized that this is where it says, hi, I'm Matt, and I have a few favorites. So that makes pretty good sense. We could double click on these labels and we could actually put in a comment. It says hi. So that way we know where hi happens. We could double click on this one. I'm Matt. And then we could click on the last one. And that way we know what we're timing against. So now when I back up, I can animate these with my markers in place, kind of knowing where my waveform is. And when I recorded with a few of those breaths in between with intention, because I knew that I would want a little bit of time for that animation to kind of happen in between words. So these little valleys here are actually pretty important. I don't usually speak that slowly when I'm just talking normally. That's kind of for effect and for kind of benefit to the animation. I'm going to set a keyframe for position for high because this is where I want it to end. I'm going to move forward to where the word high is kind of almost done but not quite done. And I'm going to set another keyframe. Then I'm going to back up to the first and I'm going to move that off screen. Whoops, wrong button. Let's move it, there we go, off screen. So that way high is going to fly in right where the word high comes in, audibly. Right click, easy ease in because we're not animals. So that way it eases in really nicely. Then I'm going to animate the I'm Matt one in about the same way. So I'm going to back up to the beginning before it's spoken. Go to the I'm Matt layer, hit P for position, stopwatch, move to when it's about done, create a new keyframe in the exact same spot, then back up and move it off screen. Easy ease in on that second keyframe because we're not animals. And then I'm going to do the last one. And I have a few favorites. Position keyframes, first keyframe, go to the end, set another keyframe for the same position, back up to the first, move it off screen. And now what we should see and hear is see and hear these lines move in from the right while the words are spoken. Let's give it a preview and see. Hi, I'm Matt, and I have a few favorites. Two of the 3 worked pretty well. If you noticed, the words "and I have a few favorites" is such a long phrase that the movement off screen on screen wasn't that extreme because of how long it was. So here's what we're going to do is we're just going to have to move this one a little bit further off screen so that way the movement is more swift. Or we could mess with the easing a little bit. Or we could simply just make it shorter so that way it's not taking as long. So let's try that out. Made a few changes. Let's preview. Hi, I'm Matt, and I have a few favorites. My favorite, not bad. There's certainly some tweaking and tuning, but we've got the basics. Now let's get these words off screen because what comes next is something that says my favorite color is blue. But we have to get all this other garbage off the screen first. So how do we want to do that? Well, what we could do is we could animate them off in the same way that we animated them on, one word at a time. However, I'm speaking pretty quickly and we don't really have a whole lot of time. So here's what I might suggest. When you bundle these words up in groups or in layers or in kind of collections or in statements, think about using all three of these together, and you can do a rotation on these layers to get them off screen. Now there's two different ways we could go about this. What I'm fond of is using null objects, but I will kind of introduce that in a moment. We could parent, hi, I'm Matt and I have a few favorites. We could parent those to each other and try and do it that way. Or we could put these into a different composition and try and animate them as a group. But the reason I like the first option, the null object, is because it allows me to control precisely when I want certain things to happen and with what. So let me introduce a null object real quick and I'll show you how I can use it to get all three of these things off all at once. I'm going to go up to Layer, New, Null Object. And what it does is it creates this dummy object called a null. And a null object has no pixel value, has no size, has no nothing really. It's just a point in space. But I can place this null object anywhere I want and then use it as a parent of these other layers. And that way I can use it to kind of control them. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to take all these objects, all these text layers, and parent it to the null1 object that we just made. When I do that, I can move null1 and all three of these move at once. But what's cooler is if I want to rotate that object, that null object, I can kind of rotate all of these guys. Whoops. Let's rotate the null. Almost like a barn door, right? Just move them all at once. So that way, hi, I'm Matt, and I have a few favorites. As they fly in, once that's over, and it takes a breath, I can use that null object, hit the old rotation key, create a keyframe, and I can rotate these guys right out of view. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to use position keyframes right at the tail end there. I'm going to rotate and move these guys right off my stage. And so the result is going to be, hi, I'm Matt, and I have a few favorites, and then they're just going to rotate right off the screen to make room for my favorite color is blue. So let's preview that before we take next steps. Hi, I'm Matt, and I have a few favorites. My favorite color, not bad. Might need to fine tune the timing a little bit. Might need to make some adjustments, but that's what a null object can do. A null object is like just a placeholder object for when you need that, kind of that one parent object, but you don't want to parent anything to itself or each other, because if we parented hi or I'm Matt or I have a few favorites to each other, then when they move in off screen, then they're going to control each other during that moment. It could get a little complicated. Now you might say that the hi layer moves first, so you could parent the other two to the hi layer. Well, that's true, but to have as a null object gives us more flexibility and it kind of keeps things clear or clean. So if I wanted to call this Act 1, and these were all under that same null, I could get really organized and I could select them all and I could change all of their color to be the same. So they're all yellow. Then when we move on to my favorite color is blue, I could set all those layers as a blue layer. And that just helps you control, manage, and organize your scenes. So this was kind of an introduction to that basic Kinetic type. You would do this with the rest of your favorite color, your favorite number, favorite movie, and kind of build out a fun little exercise using these tools and these methods. I will catch you in the next video where we'll talk a little bit more about some transitions.